Imagine being trapped deep underground, where the air is thin, the silence is suffocating, and every exit is sealed shut. No one knows where you are, no way out, no second chances. That's exactly what happened to Ethan Carter, an expert caver who made one critical mistake. He went too deep, alone. What started as an exciting adventure turned into a race against time. With oxygen running low and panic setting in, his survival depended on one impossible escape. His body was weak, his mind slipping. Then he saw it, a tiny crack of light, but the only way out was through a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough to breathe. His heart pounded as he pushed forward, feeling the walls press against his chest. One wrong move, and he'd never make it out. This is one of the scariest survival stories ever recorded, and you won't believe how it ends. Subscribe now and stay till the end. You won't want to miss this. Could you survive being trapped underground? Let us know in the comments. Ethan had done this 100 times before. Ropes secured, helmet on, flashlight cutting through the darkness, just another caving adventure. He felt the thrill of stepping into the unknown, pushing deeper than most would ever dare. As he navigated through twisting tunnels and tight crevices, the cave felt alive, the damp air, the distant sound of dripping water, the unsettling silence between every breath. He squeezed through a narrow gap, barely wide enough to crawl. If he got stuck, there was no backup plan. But he wasn't worried, not yet. Going deeper, he noticed loose rocks shifting under his feet. A small tremor shook the cave, but he brushed it off. Just the earth settling, he muttered, but in reality, the cave was warning him, and he ignored it. Each step took him farther from safety, deeper into a place where one mistake could mean no way back. He had no idea he had already crossed the point of no return. A deep, thunderous crack echoed through the cave. In an instant, the walls shook, and a wave of dust filled the air. Before Ethan could react, a massive rockfall came crashing down behind him, sealing off his only way out. His heart pounded in his chest as he spun around, coughing through the thick dust. He reached for the rocks, pushing, pulling. Nothing moved. The exit was gone. He was trapped. Panic surged through him. He grabbed his radio, no signal. His flashlight flickered, reminding him that his batteries wouldn't last forever. He yelled for help, but his voice was swallowed by the darkness. No one could hear him. It was only now that the reality sank in. He was miles underground, alone, with no way out. The cave had turned from an adventure into a death trap. Ethan forced himself to breathe slowly, pushing back the panic. If he lost control now, he'd be dead before the cave even finished him off. Think. Focus. Survive. He checked his supplies, half a bottle of water, a few energy bars, and barely any battery left in his flashlight. Not enough to last long. His first instinct was to dig through the fallen rocks, but they wouldn't budge. He tried squeezing into a side passage, but it was too tight. One wrong move, and he could get stuck for good. Sweat dripped down his face as he turned in every direction, searching for another way. Then a faint breeze. Somewhere in the cave, air was moving. That meant there had to be another way out. But finding it would mean risking everything, crawling into the unknown, hoping it wouldn't lead to an even worse dead end. With no better option, he took his last sip of water, gritted his teeth, and crawled into the darkness. Crawling through the narrow passage, Ethan felt the walls pressing against his body. Every breath echoed in the silence. The deeper he went, the colder it got. The cave felt alive. Then, the worst part, his flashlight flickered. For a split second, he was in complete darkness. His chest tightened. He slapped the light, and it sputtered back on, but the fear had already crept in. Minutes felt like hours. Was he even going the right way? His mind played tricks on him. A whisper, a shadow moving in the corner of his eye. He knew it wasn't real, but in the pitch black, his brain started creating nightmares. His breathing quickened. He tried to stay calm, but the silence was too loud. Was the cave getting smaller? Was there enough oxygen? Was he about to die alone in the dark? For the first time, pure terror set in. He wasn't just trapped, he was losing himself. Ethan knew he couldn't stay there. Panic would kill him faster than the cave itself. He closed his eyes, took a slow breath, and forced himself to focus. Survival meant moving forward. Then he felt it again. A faint breeze against his skin. Air movement. That meant a possible exit. His hands trembled as he followed the draft, crawling deeper into the unknown. The tunnel got tighter, smaller, more unforgiving. Rocks scraped against his shoulders. His helmet jammed against the ceiling. He had to turn it sideways just to keep going. Each movement drained his strength. His muscles burned, his heartbeat pounded in his ears. Then his chest stopped moving. He was wedged between the rocks, stuck. Panic hit like a hammer. He couldn't go back. He couldn't go forward. His lungs screamed for air. If he didn't act now, this would be his grave. With everything he had left, he exhaled all the air in his lungs, making his body as small as possible. He pushed, twisted, clawed forward inch by inch. His vision blurred, his arms shook, and then he broke free. A rush of fresh air filled his lungs. He was still alive, but was he any closer to escaping? Ethan's body was shaking. His lungs burned, his muscles felt like lead, but there was no time to rest. He had to keep moving. The tunnel widened slightly, just enough for him to crawl faster. The air was fresher now. That meant he was close, or at least he hoped so. Then, in the distance, a faint glow. His heart pounded. Could it be the exit, or just another illusion? He forced himself forward, dragging his exhausted body toward the light. The tunnel sloped upward, but his body was weak. Every inch felt impossible. His fingers clawed at the dirt, his breaths ragged. Just a little more. Just a little more. Then his hand broke through. Cold, fresh air rushed over his skin. With one final, desperate push, Ethan pulled himself out of the cave, collapsing onto the ground. He gasped, coughing, shaking, but he was alive. For a moment, he just lay there, staring at the sky. He had made it, but he would never forget what the cave did to him. Ethan lay on the cold ground, his chest rising and falling in the uneven gasps. He had survived. The nightmare was over, or so he thought. As he turned to look back at the cave, a deep rumbling sound filled the air. His eyes widened. The entrance, the very hole he had just crawled through, was collapsing. Within seconds, tons of rock came crashing down, sealing the cave forever. If he had been just a few minutes slower, he would have been buried alive, lost forever in the darkness. The reality hit him hard. He didn't escape. He barely escaped. The cave had almost claimed him, and the thought sent a chill down his spine. His camera had captured everything: the fear, the desperation, the fight for survival. When the footage went online, people were stunned, but no video could truly explain what he had been through. Because the truth was, Ethan didn't just leave the cave. A part of him never really came back. Ethan's escape was nothing short of a miracle. He had faced darkness, fear, and death itself, and somehow he survived. But the experience left scars, ones that no one could see. The cave had tested him, pushed him to the edge, and almost won. And even though he made it out, he would never be the same again. This was more than just a survival story. It was a reminder nature doesn't forgive, and sometimes the deepest darkness isn't around you, it's inside you.